Point 2, prospecting research. Once again, glad to have Cory Bray, managing partner of ClozeLoop, here with me. Thank you, Cory.
Thanks, Joseph.
So we had a fantastic conversation about prospecting last time. You'd mentioned the importance of research, and I promised we'd dig into it further.
Yeah.
So why don't we start off with the big why? Why is research important?
Research is important because you need to know who you're reaching out to with what message. That's it.
So if we think about good prospecting, that's obviously critical.
Right.
But what would be the difference then between well-done research versus poor research?
Well, poor research, I don't know. I think there's two things. Poor research could be incorrect. You could end up with the wrong folks assigned to different messages, and so you're saying the wrong things to wrong people. Or it could be inefficient, where you've got people sitting around doing research all day and not actually reaching out to folks.
So you spoke about researching instead of reaching out to folks.
Yeah.
If you think about a rep who's responsible for outreach, how would you tell them to divvy up their time?
Well, can I start with telling you what I tell the company?
100%.
I would say don't have your prospecting folks research.
Okay, who should then?
It's a little controversial in some corners of the world.
So if it's not those reps who are prospecting, who should be doing that research?
Well, the marketing team and sales leadership. And going back to our prior module, once you identify the target market and you know what companies you're going after, you identify the personas, ideally you know what pain you're solving for each persona, and then you develop content that's relevant to each persona and the pain that you solve for them.
So it sounds like it's less about taking a list of contacts and researching them, and more about using that research to qualify somebody onto that list. Is that a...
Exactly, so I'm segmenting my list. For example, if I want to talk to manufacturing VPs of supply chain, and I want to talk to them, companies that have between 100 and 500 people. Well, they're probably all experiencing roughly the same problems. Some of them might have already solved it. Some might not know about this problem yet. But if I just put those in a list and I just dial down the list, there's no reason to go through and learn something personal about each one of them if all I'm trying to do is get a 15 or 30-minute conversation. I've got a pain point that's relevant to this specific type of person that I'm talking to. If it's something they're struggling with, they're going to take the meeting. If it's not, a bit of research about their personal background isn't necessarily going to be compelling, or they might just take the meeting to be nice, at which point you're just wasting your time.
Fair points. Thinking a little bit about that work, if I speak to a rep about researching, the go-to tools are things like LinkedIn, the customer's website. When you speak about research, that's a bigger problem. What are some of the types of tools an organization might use to accomplish that objective?
The best tool is the customer success team.
Do tell.
These are the folks that are talking to these people every single day. The sales teams that I've seen that work with customer success teams thoroughly understand their customer and their prospects. And then beyond customer success, if you've got a professional services team, implementation, technical support, anybody that works in the weeds with the customer, being able to distill what they've learned into very key and core commonalities, that allows the salespeople and the prospecting team to really focus on what matters, not some hypothetical thing that you thought up in the conference room, real world intel.
So it sounds like you're saying the most important thing isn't necessarily a database tool or something like Excel, but instead getting to the crux, the core of that problem.
What do prospects care about?
Pain.
Their pain, right? That's it. If they have a problem, they want to solve it. If they don't have a problem, they might be nice to you, but that's not going to translate to revenue. And so that's just a waste of time. So focus in on learning what specific pain points you solve for each persona out there, group them together in your prospecting efforts, and focus in on one at a time. And that's what you're going to need from a research perspective.
So we're hearing a lot of signals about what's the right way to think about research. Not everybody does it right.
Right.
So what happens if research is done badly?
Well, let's start with the inefficiency piece.
Sure.
I've seen people sit at their desks and they say, I'm going to reach out to this person, so I'm going to dig into their background a little bit. Listen to a whole podcast that they did, check out all of the things that they have on their LinkedIn profile. You might get their attention. But you know what gets their attention like that? Saying that you solve one of the top 3 problems that they're dealing with right now. Now the fear is, as a salesperson, well, what if they don't have this problem? Well, if they don't have the problem, they're not going to give you money.
That makes it simple.
One of the best ways to inspect your pipeline is to say, okay, well, why would this person give you $50,000? When they go to their boss and their boss says, why are we giving this company $50,000? What would they say? And if that's not a compelling statement, it's not a deal.
You're right. That rep listening to my podcast isn't necessarily going to make that decision any better.
No. Now I've got a fake friend.
There you go.
That's it.
So that's a great takeaway. When we're prospecting, let's avoid fake friends and make sure we're focusing on pain. One of the things that comes up when we speak to reps about research is the role of research earlier versus discovery. How do you talk about those terms and avoid conflating them?
Well, research is, to me, just learning basic facts about a person or organization, whereas discovery is probing in a way that you can't do online or without actually having a conversation with somebody.
So it sounds like research is validating that somebody fits those profiles and the gradients we discussed last time, but that discovery is about making it actually more individual and validating those pains. When you think about those questions, that discovery process, what are some of the levers you'd see somebody use? I assume not just looking on LinkedIn or listening to their podcast.
Yeah, I mean, get a conversation with them and have a really strong opener, have a really compelling reason for them to talk with you. So if you're calling them, ask permission for 30 seconds to tell them why you called and talk about the pain points that you solve for other organizations like theirs. And at that point, they're either going to say, none of that's relevant to me, or, ooh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll talk to them.
Okay, so to put into brass tacks for a rep, got a rep who's doing outbound prospecting, and they believe they need to do some research before contacting this person. And once they've got that person, they need to spend time running discovery. If they were going to choose how to split an hour between their research on that prospect or getting ready for discovery, how would you recommend they split that hour?
Okay, here's what I do. Before I even start doing research, I'd say, what do I know about this market segment? Let's say manufacturing. What do I know about this persona? Let's say VP of supply chain. What specific pain points do they have that we solve for? And if I know that, then the question is, what else am I going to learn that's going to shift them from not wanting to take a meeting with me to wanting to take a meeting with me?
So you've got a marketing team that's provided all that to the sales rep.
Ideally.
What does that sales rep then do? Any time on research, or just dig right into it and get that prospect?
Go for it, man. You're going to hit your number. If all you do is focus on the right people in the right market segments with the right message and hit them through a couple different channels, because you never know where they're going to be. They might be on email, they might be on phone calls, they might be sitting in a trade show that you can go to down the street. You're going to hit your goal if you do it with skill and if you do it with the right quantity. But if you're sitting at your desk trying to uncover something that they said 6 years ago at a conference so you can get their attention, you might get a meeting with them. I don't know, but it just takes so much more energy. And like I said in the last module, a lot of folks that have the desire to do research don't necessarily have the desire to do a bunch of outbound prospecting, and vice versa.
And you spoke earlier about that balance between having control on how effective and efficient your time is and how much effort you put in.
Right.
And this is a good indicator about making that efficient.
Exactly.
I love the comment. So to break it down to brass tacks, I heard someone who was speaking at an event recently. They were speaking to a room full of heads of marketing, and they told the room, stop making your reps research. What do you think about that?
I think that if you force somebody to do something that they're not good at and they don't like, they're not going to be successful. Here's the litmus test. Does your job description list that 20 to 30% of your time is going to be done doing internet research? It's funny because a lot of times when I hear people complain about having to do so much research at work because the marketing team didn't do what they were supposed to do, I go look at the job description they have posted on their website for the same job, and it says nothing about research. So you're just bait and switch. No good.
So we're seeing all these roles where people are being forced to do research despite the job description.
Yeah.
And I think we've already determined and we agree that the marketing team, when they provide details to the sales reps, are really responsible for that research. So if a sales rep shouldn't be researching, why are we spending so much time talking about it here?
Because the marketing teams don't tee them up with what they need.
That's fair. So how would you identify if your team isn't providing you the right information?
It's so simple. It is, do we have our market segments well defined? Do we know each attribute of the markets, company size, industry, other signals? Do we know what personas inside of each one of those market segments we want to target? Do we know what pain points each one of those have? And do we know what messaging we can use to go after them? That's all we need. It takes an hour for somebody that knows the market segments inside and out to just whiteboard this, take a picture of it, and then all of a sudden it's company knowledge and no longer stored in somebody's head.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for walking us through this, Cory. This has been excellent. Looking forward to our next conversation. And I hope everybody enjoys their researching less as they prospect, and happy selling.
Thanks, Joseph.
Take care.